Hey folks, welcome back to the Trinity Episcopal Church YouTube Bible study. I'm Jimmy Abbott, the priest here at Trinity on Galveston Island. And today we're looking at the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verses 28 through 43a. I wanted to make sure I read that right. This is the story of the Transfiguration, when Jesus is transfigured into heavenly glory in front of Peter, James, and John. This story of the Transfiguration is always read in the Episcopal Church the Sunday before Ash Wednesday, which is, of course, this Sunday. Now, to make matters more confusing, this is not the Feast of the Transfiguration. The Feast of the Transfiguration is always on August 6th. So, whatever, we get to read it multiple times in a year. Hooray. I want to read a little bit of this for you and then unpack it some. It says that Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. So, Moses and Elijah represent the law and the prophets, who also both had encounters with the Lord God on a mountain. I've said this before, I'll say it again. When you're reading the Bible and someone goes up a mountain, all of your alarm bells should be going off. Something big is about to happen. Indeed, that is what happens here. It goes on. Now, Peter and his companions were way down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen, listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. A lot to unpack there. First, let's start at the end. Why didn't Peter, James, and John go down and just tell everybody, "Oh my gosh, I just saw Moses and Elijah with Jesus in heavenly glory"? I think part of what is going on here is that they are keeping quiet. They have been instructed to keep quiet so that after the crucifixion and resurrection, all of this makes more sense. That if all they did was they go and talk about Jesus being so glorious, well then what meaning would the crucifixion have? What meaning would the resurrection have? I think that once we now see the Transfiguration backwards through the lens of the crucifixion and resurrection, it all makes much more sense. So I think part of that is what is going on. And don't you just love Peter? Like, let's camp out. Let's build some churches. Let's just hang out here with you and Moses and Elijah. And that's a right instinct, to be in prayer and in worship with God. But notice that they have to go back down the mountain. And I won't read this, but once they go back down the mountain, they encounter a great crowd, and Jesus casts out a demon who is tormenting a young boy. Back down the mountain. You know, back in my younger days, when I was a Boy Scout and a Boy Scout leader, I would oftentimes take trips up mountains. And being on top of a mountain is an exhilarating experience. That's why we call it a mountaintop experience. But after climbing, you get up there and there's always this realization that, you know, the journey is only halfway over. The journey is only halfway over. You made up the mountain, but you can't just stop. You have to go back down the mountain. And I think then this is a good image of the pattern of our life, going up the mountain to be with God and then back down the mountain to serve God's people. It's that reminder that we have to go to be with Jesus and then back out into the world. So up the mountain, down the mountain. And I'm wondering for you, what are your mountaintop experiences that you've had with God? And then from that experience, how did you go down the mountain to serve God and God's people? I'd love to hear what you have to say in your own life about going up the mountain and back down the mountain. So good to spend all of this time with you all. You will be in my prayers as you begin your own Lenten disciplines of prayer and study and service. I would love to hear from you. You can drop a comment here in the comment section of the video. You can also join our online classroom. I would love to hear from all of you about your mountaintop experiences and then how that inspired you to live or be different in the world. Thank you.